The Hebrew alphabet is one of the oldest in the world, and it has exactly 22 letters. But have you ever stopped to wonder, why 22? Is that just a random number, a historical accident, or could there be something more going on? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty wild theory that the number 22 isn't an accident at all, but a deliberate code, a divine signature, hidden in plain sight. So yeah, this is the big question, right? It's the key that unlocks this whole idea we're exploring. The theory goes that the number 22 is anything but random. It's supposedly a signature woven right into the fabric of the biblical story, its symbols, and even into mathematics itself. So let's see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Okay, so where do we even start looking for clues? Well, the idea here is that the first layer of evidence is actually hiding in plain sight. It's all about finding a recurring pattern, a number that just keeps popping up in some of the most basic, foundational lists in the Bible. First up, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Genesis, chapter 1. Now, everyone knows the story is built around 7 days, right? But the argument here is that if you go through and count every single distinct act of creation, every let there be, you end up with a very specific number, 22 separate acts. And boom, there's our number, 22. Think of it like a numerical fingerprint. We're going to be on the lookout for it throughout this whole explainer. And believe it or not, the pattern doesn't stop there. The source material points to another critical list, the patriarchs. If you trace the family line from Adam, the very first man, and follow it all the way down to Jacob, the guy who becomes Israel and fathers the 12 tribes, you find there are exactly 22 generations in that lineage. And there it is again. It's like a drumbeat, right? First, the acts of creation. Now, the line of patriarchs. Both of these foundational accounts seem to land on the number 22. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The pattern supposedly keeps going even after the nation of Israel splits into two. The claim is, if you count up all the kings of Judah from the very beginning right down to its fall, you get 22. And then, if you count the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel, you also get 22. It's a perfect symmetrical echo. Kind of spooky. Okay, so we've looked at these lists in the Bible, but now we're going to pivot a little, because the argument gets way more complex. We're moving from just counting things into the world of sacred symbols, numerology, and it all starts with one of the most famous objects in the entire Bible. So this is the menorah, the iconic 7-branched lampstand. And according to the instructions for building it, way back in the book of Exodus, its branches had to be decorated with very specific things. And when you add up just the almond blossom-shaped bowls, what do you get? You guessed it, 22. All right, hang with me on this next one, because it's a bit of a mind-bender. The claim is that there's a code hidden in the very first verse of the Bible. So, step 1, the verse has 7 Hebrew words. Step 2, each of those words obviously starts with a letter. Now, step 3, and this is key, in Hebrew, every letter also works as a number. And step 4, when you add up the numerical values of just those first 7 letters, the total is 22. And this is where my jaw kind of dropped. We just found the numbers 22 and 7 encoded in that first verse. So what happens if you put them together as a fraction? 22 divided by 7. Well, that happens to be the classic ancient approximation for pi, the fundamental number for every single circle in the universe. Is that just a coincidence? The theory suggests maybe not. All right, take a deep breath, because now we're heading into the most esoteric part of this whole idea. The source proposes that the 22 letters of the alphabet aren't just a bucket to hold the divine message, but that they are actually derived from the very structure of the divine name itself. Okay, so this is the Tetragrammaton, the famous 4-letter name of God, YAH-WEH. The argument here focuses on how you actually write it. The claim is that to write these 4 Hebrew letters, it takes a total of 8 distinct pen strokes. Now remember that number, 8. It's going to be really important in a second. So you're probably asking, okay, how do we get from 8 strokes to 22 letters? Well, the argument is a theological one, based on the idea of the Trinity. It sees God's name being manifested 3 times. The first stroke, the Yud, is shared by all 3. Then you add the 7 leftover strokes for each of the 3 manifestations. So the math looks like this: 1 common stroke plus 7 plus another 7 plus a final 7, which adds up to 22. So the theory doesn't just stay inside the Bible. The argument is that this 22 pattern actually pops up in the outside world too, in geometry, and even in the super abstract world of pure mathematics. Let's take a look at the papal cross. According to a structural analysis, its geometry can actually be broken down into 22 key points or squares. Here's how. It's got 3 main intersection points, 7 points on the rest of the vertical line, and 12 points on the horizontal lines. And what do you get when you add 3 plus 7 plus 12? You got it, 22. Okay, for this last piece of the puzzle, we gotta touch on a little bit of math. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. It's called a partition function. All that means is it's the number of ways you can write a whole number as a sum of other whole numbers. Like the number 3, you can partition it 3 ways, just 3 or 2 plus 1 or 1 plus 1 plus 1. Simple as that. So here's the kicker. Remember those 8 strokes from God's name we talked about? Well, if you ask a mathematician, how many different ways can the number 8 be partitioned? The answer is exactly 22. The argument here is that this is a direct mathematical link between the structure of the divine name and the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, so after that whirlwind tour through scripture, symbols, and even higher math, where does that leave us? Let's try to put all these puzzle pieces on the table and see what kind of picture they make. The whole point being made here is that this isn't just one isolated coincidence. It's the idea of evidence piling up from all these different seemingly unrelated fields, all pointing back to that same number, 22. From the creation of the universe to a mathematical function, the pattern just keeps showing up. And really, it all boils down to this quote from the source material. The conclusion is that there seems to be a supernatural, geometric, numerical, and alphabetical, literary, linguistic reason why this number 22 is so important. It's presenting all these connections as proof of an intentional, really intricate design. And that leaves us right here with this one big question. Is this whole web of connections proof of a profound hidden code, like the source suggests? Or is it just a really compelling example of how good our brains are at finding patterns, even where there aren't any? Why this matters is it really makes you think about how we find meaning in the world, whether it's in our language or faith or the numbers that seem to hold everything together. So what do you think? A supernatural design or just a fascinating coincidence?